Made one out of styrofoam boxes on the side here. I've made some out of some some tubbing from some shelves, and we have, of course, the rabbit enclosure ones. The methodology is pretty much exactly the same. You can use recycled materials. We're going to use broken glass for this one. Fantastic way to reuse broken glass. And if you want to scale this up into a larger one, as you see behind me, the methodology is still pretty much exactly the same. Now, obviously for something this large, you wouldn't use broken glass because it doesn't have a wicking potential, doesn't draw up water. But for things like this, it is perfectly fine. Now, we've got kale, we've got beetroots, we've got spring onions, we've got pak choi. All of these systems I barely even need to water. You can make deeper ones like the styrofoam box for carrots and whatnot. And all of this stuff I didn't pay a single cent for. I barely have to water. It waters itself. It holds water underneath it. And today that's the video we're going to get into. So thanks for coming and checking out this workshop, man. I hope everyone enjoys.
Mindful militants here to plant the seed, making change in actuality, manifesting our potentiality. We open priest, open deep into rally genes. We have the availability.
Yo people, what's up? It's Dave here for the Month Militant Network again. And today I'm doing a project that I've been wanting to do for ages. Convert this rabbit enclosure I have behind me into a wicking bed. Now my plan for today with this wicking bed is to do stuff that I haven't actually done before in my previous wicking beds. The first of those things is to bring the overflow hole down to the bottom and to attach this transparent clear right angle tube to the bottom that will hopefully allow me to not only see where the water level is actually at, but pivot it and fully drain the water. With some wicking beds like the ones I've already made, there is one small issue, but I haven't really found it to be an issue yet, and that is stagnation of water. Stagnation of water can cause all types of problems with root rot and other things, and plants generally like having a dry and wet cycle. A dry and a wet cycle of dirt and the roots creates aeration, and aeration, nice oxygenated roots, which plants friggin' love. So I brainstormed for ages, how can I find a clear transparent tube without buying one? Because as you may have known from my last few videos, I fucking love making these things out of recycled materials. The idea that gardening has to be expensive and building these systems means you have to go to your local department store and buy all these things is ludicrous. You can find things around the house, on the side of the road, random places, and you can build stuff with them. And I used a drill in my last video. You didn't even need to use a drill. Before I even own that drill, which by the way hardly even works, you used to just heat up a nail with a lighter and just poke a hole in the side of it. So you don't need all these fancy tools and equipment to make these things. So today I'm going to step it up a notch by not only adding a tube, but also be using some of this insect pest control netting I got off eBay. So this is really the only thing I've actually bought for this build today. This tube is actually the straw out of this Disney World cup that I found at an op shop. Fantastic thing about it is it's actually bendy, and as you can see, I've tied a rubber band here that allows it to bend. With this rubber band, I can actually bring the rubber band up higher to create more of an angle, and due to the ridgeness of it, I can bring it downwards and it creates less of an angle. Now you might not have access to some beautiful weird bendy straw that just seems to fucking fit perfectly. Half the fun I find of making these weird little systems is to be creative in the things that you can find. I'm using a freaking rabbit enclosure, like. So first thing I need to do is smash some bottles.
Let me smash.
Now this is my little materials corner with some of my stuff, and as you can see I've got 2 whole buckets full of glass bottles. Now if you remember in my last video, using eye protection, gloves, and closed-toe shoes is very important for this next step. Smashing glass is dangerous. You don't want that shit in your eyes or in your mouth or anywhere in your body, so be careful. Now, in my first video, I explained the double bucket method. It's as simple as this. One bucket, which you can see is already pretty fucked up from smashing bottles, goes inside the second bucket, and that creates more protection. So I got my brick, I got my shoes, and I got my trusty eye goggles. So with all of those, we're gonna get to smashing the bottles. Now in my last video, I suggested aiming for the neck of the bottle. It's the easiest place to break. Once the bottle is broken, it's a lot easier to keep breaking down into smaller bits. Now I'm sure someone in the comments is going to be like, but what about the label? Shouldn't you remove them? Well, if you want to sit there and remove 100 fucking labels from bottles, be my guest. I tried it. It's really annoying. It takes a fucking long time. And honestly, I haven't found any difference in its ability to grow my plants. It's just paper at the end of the day, really. I'm sure someone would debate me on that. Fucking come at me. Look at that, guys. I've done the first whole bin. I've got about half a bucket full of broken glass. This was all glass that honestly was probably going to go to landfill because our government here in Victoria and Australia in general is fucking so behind on recycling. Now for those of you wondering, why does this guy have so many beer bottles? I just want to make a disclaimer that I'm not an alcoholic. All of these beer bottles and glass bottles are left over from friends and housemates and certain parties that I've had. I don't even drink alcohol. Unfortunately, alcohol kills brain cells, and in my situation, I gotta save all the ones I have left because there ain't that many. So yeah, now I've smashed up a bunch of glass. I'm gonna go ahead and make the water carrier hose line that goes under the bottom of the glass and just fit it in there, and then we're gonna pour on the glass, and we're gonna keep raising it and maybe smash some more glass to see if we have enough. Just like the previous video I made on how to make a wicking bed, I've gone ahead and I've found some hose line, and now all I'm going to do now is just go ahead and drill a bunch of holes in it.
Enter into my tones, pleasure, envision it to the gross texture.
So in the middle of me filming, my drill actually lost power, so I've been going through manually using scissors and just poking and twisting holes in them. So you don't actually need a drill.
With the synchronous, there is no separate incidents, it's only ever a continuance, but most don't fret a coincidence.
So now I'm just measuring the hose line to see when I need to cut the end off.
Your time, go dissident, grow in sync with it, hone in on it. No, you're not limited, you are God's instrument, the most omnipotent. You're composed of infinite emptiness, but that's something you know not with your limited attentiveness.
So I'm going to go ahead and cut it up about here. I'm going to only looping it in probably once, twice, 3 times. That should be enough.
As if you be separate, whereas you're intrinsically.
Alright, now with that done, we're going to go ahead and put in the smash glass.
You're intrinsically connected and interdependent. The entirety of the picture's expression lies within every segment of time, is seen as linear progression. Yet everything that has ever been and will ever be exists in a second. I am as much my body as I am the glistening heavens. I am all that is, not anything's an exception. I am beginningless, deathless, for nothing arises from nothingness. It's our misconceptions which give life to sufferance. If you can witness the perfection in what's otherwise cited as ugliness, transcendence will likely become a vet. For you can't have progress without a little regress. No.
So the next phase of the operation is to add a shade cloth onto all of this. Now I was lucky and I found this perfect shade cloth material in my garage, but if you don't seem to have any ideal shade cloth, cutting up those reusable tote bags and things like that also work really well. Now before I add the shade cloth in the soil, there's one thing I need to do that I didn't do in my old video, and that is mark the line of where the glass meets the shade cloth. This will determine where we will set the overflow tube. So yeah, I've marked where the overflow indicator is. Now another extra addition I'm going to add on here that I didn't add in my last video is I'm going to cable tie this hose so it sits more vertically to the outside. I'm going to grab my trusty fabric scissors here. So that method didn't really work. So yeah, I'm going to go to my next favorite method, which is finding a little metal spike. Nail works well, and just heating it up with a lighter, and then yeah, just using that as like a heat drill. Hey, it worked.
To be found, so that's meaningless. If only I could amount to my pre-existing completeness, for then I would be crowned by my defects, down to be a reject and cloud my own genius, and no longer resist the resistance, but be with the sea's rhythms and see with its deep wisdom, be conditionless amidst the limits.
So I'm going to add a whole tub of compost to this as well.
Once you see that you don't know shit, you're developing actual intelligence. For if you're an expert on your experience, your concepts blur its appearances, which prevents observing it as it really is. You're feeling.
I'm just fidgeting with the hole, making it bigger, slowly heating the end of the tube, just fidgeting around with it to make it fit. Now you don't want to cut this too big. The second you cut it too big, it gets a lot harder to fix. Hey! Alright, success. We actually got it in. Now, see, that's looking pretty good. I'm just going to go ahead and where that line was, where we marked it, I'm just going to cut it off just a little bit higher than that. So yeah, now with the overflow tube rigged up, we're going to fill it up via the hose line and see if it works. So it might actually be hard to see, but the water level is just actually about right there. So we can assume that the water level is about here in the tub. So yeah, now with this tub, hopefully the idea is if I want to empty it, I can just twist it And look at that. All the water will just drain out. But if I keep it upright, the water will stay in. I'm really glad that fucking works. I did not test that before I filmed this video. Now one of the final parts is to add the pest control netting on the top.
Ground by my defects, down to be reject and cloud my own genius, and no longer resist the resistance, but be with the seas rhythms and see with its deep wisdom. Be conditionless amidst the limits, seize the infinite in every minute. Well, egolessness only exists in comparison to arrogance. Once you see that you don't know shit, you're developing actual intelligence. For if you're an expert on...
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is the end of the video. This is the finished product of what I made. Ended up just securing the netting around the top cage with a really tight rope, just roped around it, and then that allowed me to tuck the netting. Once I get a hold of some staples, I'll probably just go ahead and just staple the netting into itself. So there, here we have it. We have the wicking bed itself, the pest control inline, and then down the end we have the overflow tube. I'm really looking forward to growing some things in this. I think for one of the next videos I'll be doing is showing you how I start and germinate seeds using recycled old glass jars and paper towels. So keep your eye peeled for that. We also just hit 10 subscribers, so thank you so much for everyone that has subscribed. I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to putting out more content. Have an awesome day, guys. Bye.
Advance its story, nothing can withstand its glory.
And that's sort of like
nothing can withstand its glory.
There's all these different techniques of meditation, like sit like this,
nothing can withstand its glory. Everything is open to change. Right now, these times are changing rapidly. Gotta be open to this shit.